Good morning, everyone. It's Lee Henson, President and Founder of Agile, and it's time for today's episode of the Daily Stand-Up. So without any further ado, let's get started. Today is Thursday. It's a beautiful day out. The sun is shining. Everything's going right. The weekend's just around the corner. I hope that you're ready. Today, as promised, I want to talk to you about how to determine whether your organization has a fixed or a growth mindset. And what are some of the things that you should see as part of your organizational and cultural shift to Agile? So the big question that I get all the time is, this whole concept of switching from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset is incredibly great. But the question is, how do I know? How can I confirm that the culture shift's actually happening? And how do I know that we're moving in the right direction? Are there any KPIs or things that I can look for that will help me see that the change is in motion or that the change is progressing? And that's a powerful question. So I thought today we'd cover the top 5 things that I've identified, at least initially, that will show you that you're making a turn, that you're advancing, you're making progress, that things are going your way, right? So coming in at number 1 is recognition that complexity and uncertainty leads to unfocused solutions. So I think that sometimes we don't necessarily realize that we're making things way harder than we have to, right? So I think that when you start to recognize that the focus should be on providing a simple solution that solves the real world issue, instead of trying to overcomplicate or overbuild, it just brings you to a place where you're lowering your technical debt load, you're understanding the true needs of your end consumer, and you're building products and services that are focused and dedicated and things that people actually use every day. So I think that's a powerful indicator that you've made the turn around the bend, right? Coming in at number 2, understanding that the use of Agile allows teams and organizations to iterate their product and service solutions. I still think sometimes what I see is we want to do Agile, but we also want to follow all the requirements in this technical user requirements document. And that drives me crazy because you can't do both. I mean, sure, you could have something as a guideline, right, as a baseline. But the whole idea of being Agile, the whole idea of understanding business agility is that we have the ability to iterate. We have the ability to make things better. We have the ability to inspect and adapt, to be transparent, to expose the empirical process. And I think that sometimes I see organizations that still fall under the mindset of, we want to do things the way we've always done them, the traditional mindset, but we want to scrumify it or agilify it. And can't we just sprinkle a little scrum dust on there? Wouldn't that work? Somebody told me if we did, it would be completely safe. Okay, that was a terrible joke, but I think you get where I'm going with this, right? You can't have, this isn't Hannah Montana, you can't have the best of both worlds. I guess you can dabble your toe in the Agile pool to experiment and see how it will work for your organization. But if you're truly looking for that growth mindset, you need to make the decision to firmly iterate all of your different things, right? Your products and services. If not, you're going to wind up right back where you were. Coming in at number 3 is a realization that empirical process control allows you to more sharply inspect and adapt quickly and transparently. So I think that when you start talking about inspect and adapt, people get scared because they think that that gives you the right to introduce new things at any time, or it gives you the right to create and just build up debt. In actuality, if you put some team working agreements in place and have some ground rules about how people engage and what they can and can't do, I feel like this is a very powerful way for you to really understand growth mindset. Growth mindset really does focus on reacting to a feedback loop. Now, what's interesting is a lot of people say, well, we need to balance proactive and reactive, and I don't disagree. But I feel like sometimes we either the pendulum swings too far one way. We either become super reactive and our needs are constantly changing and there's no way we have stability, or we become extremely proactive and we assume a lot of things and we end up building a product or service that no one likes. So I think it's a balance between the two. But I think that when you start to see the shift to a growth mindset, that's when you're going to see a better understanding, a more clear understanding of the importance of the feedback loop and how to leverage it and how to make decisions quickly. Coming in at number 4, learning through introspection, how Agile promotes a true growth mindset. Now, we talk a lot about retrospectives and about what went well, what didn't go well, what can improve, and team retrospectives and all that good stuff. That's great. Don't get me wrong. That's fine. But I think that sometimes organizations don't take the time to do an introspective, to discuss how they're currently working on things, what their current work model looks like, what they're doing in the workplace, and they don't take the time to figure those things out. And by not taking the time to do some introspection and learning as they go, if you will, what they're doing is they're still creating some bad behaviors. And I think that when you start to see the bad behaviors diminish and you start to see people who are looking back at what we've done that has worked versus what we've done that hasn't worked, that's when you start to see people saying, aha, I have confidence that this is going to work. So let's move in this direction. And I think that's the right way to approach this. I think it's the right thing to do. Yes. And then finally, number 5, one of the most important ones, learning to limit WIP and work in progress, or WIP limits, right? Thereby learning to focus on outcome over output and understanding that less is more. And I know it sounds like a lot in one, but it does all go together. So what ends up happening is when you limit your WIP, when you do your WIP limits, what ends up happening is the teams are allowed to swarm. And I know in some organizations you find it difficult, but the key to successfully doing Agile is allowing teams to swarm a limited WIP, let them knock out those projects in a quicker format, and then let them get that feedback loop going sooner, because that's going to increase your revenue. It's going to improve quality. You're going to have more hands on deck. It improves team cross functionality, and it gets you to the finish line, right? I think the second part is when you focus on outcome over output. I've been to a lot of organizations recently where, the question I get is, how do I get people to increase the number of story points they can deliver each sprint? And I'm like, oh my goodness, that shouldn't even be a thing, right? Not story points, just using that as a metric to determine how well a team's doing shouldn't be a thing. I feel like it's important for us to make sure people are being productive, but it's also more important for us to trust that people are going to do the right thing. So when we start talking about focusing on outcome over output, I want to make sure we're building as little as possible to keep a customer happy, right? And oftentimes when we're on fixed contracts or fixed bid contracts where we have fixed workload, fixed money, fixed budget, fixed time, it's scary because sometimes we don't want to lighten the load on one so we can increase the load on another and produce barely minimal stuff on one and knock those out sequentially. Oftentimes we'll reduce the size of our teams and try to do them all at the same time. And what we'll discover is we'll get to the end, to the finish line, and we'll only have 3 of the 5 that we promised to deliver, and they won't be well done, and they have no cross functionality, and people get frustrated. But then when you ask them, like, yeah, we tried the Agile, we tried it, and it didn't work, because they don't understand the concept of limit WIP, have fewer things in flight at a time. You can still do the same 3 projects. The only difference is you're going to deliver 2 of them earlier, you'll deliver 1 at the end, and you have a chance for that feedback loop to kick in motion so that you can understand that less is more and understand how you can get to the finish line with your projects and start your revenue earlier, start earning revenue sooner. And if you're not a revenue growth model, start making the impression on your final consumer sooner. So I hope this was good for you. I hope that you enjoyed this. As always, I encourage you to visit agiledad.com where you can learn more about this topic and many others. We appreciate you. We love that you're part of our podcast. Encourage your friends to subscribe. We're trying to hit a milestone here that we can celebrate. But until then, I want you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.